Chapter 70 of the Old Curiosity Shop. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Mill Nicholson. The Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens. Chapter 70. Day broke, and found them still upon their way. Since leaving home they had halted here and there for necessary refreshment, and had frequently been delayed, especially in the night time, by waiting for fresh horses. They had made no other stoppages, but the weather continued rough, and the roads were often steep and heavy. It would be night again before they reached their place of destination. Kit, all bluff and hardened with the cold, went on manfully, and, having enough to do to keep his blood circulating, to picture to himself the happy end of this adventurous journey, and to look about him and be amazed at everything, had little spare time for thinking of discomforts. Though his impatience and that of his fellow travellers rapidly increased as the day waned, the hours did not stand still. The short daylight of winter soon faded away, and it was dark again when they had yet many miles to travel. As it grew dusk, the wind fell. Its distant moanings were more low and mournful, and, as it came creeping up the road and rattling covertly among the dry brambles on either hand, it seemed like some great phantom for whom the way was narrow, whose garments rustled as it stalked along. By degrees it lulled and died away, and then it came on to snow. The flakes fell fast and thick, soon covering the ground some inches deep, and spreading abroad a solemn stillness. The rolling wheels were noiseless, and the sharp ring and clatter of the horses' hoofs became a dull, muffled tramp. The life of their progress seemed to be slowly hushed, and something death-like to usurp its place. Shading his eyes from the falling snow, which froze upon their lashes and obscured his sight, Kit often tried to catch the earliest glimpse of twinkling lights, denoting their approach to some not distant town. He could descry objects enough at such times, but none correctly. Now a tall church spire appeared in view, which presently became a tree, a barn, a shadow on the ground thrown on it by their own bright lamps. Now there were horsemen, foot passengers, carriages going on before, or meeting them in narrow ways, which, when they were close upon them, turned to shadows too. A wall, a ruin, a sturdy gable end, would rise up in the road, and, when they were plunging headlong at it, would be the road itself. Strange turnings too, bridges and sheets of water, appeared to start up here and there, making the way doubtful and uncertain, and yet they were on the same bare road, and these things, like the others, as they were passed, turned into dim illusions. He descended slowly from his seat, for his limbs were numbed, when they arrived at a lone posting-house, and inquired how far they had to go to reach their journey's end. It was a late hour in such by-places, and the people were abed, but a voice answered from an upper window, 10 miles. The 10 minutes that ensued appeared an hour, but at the end of that time a shivering figure led out the horses they required, and after another brief delay they were again in motion. It was a cross-country road, full, after the first 3 or 4 miles, of holes and cart-ruts, which, being covered by the snow, were so many pitfalls to the trembling horses, and obliged them to keep a foot-pace. As it was next to impossible for men so much agitated as they were by this time to sit still and move so slowly, all 3 got out and plodded on behind the carriage. The distance seemed interminable, and the walk was most laborious. As each was thinking within himself that the driver must have lost his way, a church bell, close at hand, struck the hour of midnight, and the carriage stopped. It had moved softly enough, but when it ceased to crunch the snow, the silence was as startling as if some great noise had been replaced by perfect stillness. 'This is the place, gentlemen,' said the driver, dismounting from his horse, and knocking at the door of a little inn. 'Halloa! Past 12 o'clock is the dead of night here.' The knocking was loud and long, but it failed to rouse the drowsy inmates. All continued dark and silent as before. They fell back a little, and looked up at the windows, which were mere black patches in the whitened house front. No light appeared. The house might have been deserted, or the sleepers dead, for any air of life it had about it. They spoke together with a strange inconsistency, in whispers, unwilling to disturb again the dreary echoes they had just now raised. 'Let us go on,' said the younger brother, 'and leave this good fellow to wake them if he can. I cannot rest until I know that we are not too late. Let us go on, in the name of Heaven.' They did so, leaving the postilion to order such accommodation as the house afforded, and to renew his knocking. Kit accompanied them with a little bundle which he had hung in the carriage when they left home, and had not forgotten since. The bird, in his old cage, just as she had left him. She would be glad to see her bird, he knew. The road wound gently downward. As they proceeded, they lost sight of the church whose clock they had heard, and of the small village clustering round it. The knocking, which was now renewed, and which in that stillness they could plainly hear, troubled them. They wished the man would forbear, or that they had told him not to break the silence until they returned. The old church tower, clad in a ghostly garb of pure cold white, again rose up before them, and a few moments brought them close beside it. A venerable building, grey even in the midst of the hoary landscape. An ancient sundial on the belfry wall was nearly hidden by the snowdrift, and scarcely to be known for what it was. Time itself seemed to have grown dull and old, as if no day were ever to displace the melancholy night. A wicket gate was close at hand, but there was more than one path across the churchyard to which it led, and, uncertain which to take, they came to a stand again. The village street, if street that could be called, which was an irregular cluster of poor cottages of many heights and ages, some with their fronts, some with their backs, and some with gable ends towards the road, with here and there a signpost or a shed encroaching on the path, was close at hand. There was a faint light in a chamber window not far off, and Kit ran towards that house to ask their way. His first shout was answered by an old man within, who presently appeared at the casement, wrapping some garment round his throat as a protection from the cold, and demanded who was abroad at that unseasonable hour, wanting him. "'Tis hard weather, this," he grumbled, "and not a night to call me up in. My trade is not of that kind that I need to be roused from bed. The business on which folks want me will keep cold, especially at this season. What do you want?" "I would not have roused you if I had known you were old and ill," said Kit. "Old?" repeated the other peevishly. "How do you know I'm old? Not so old as you think, friend, perhaps. As to being ill, you will find many young people in worse case than I am. More's a pity that it should be so. Not that I should be strong and hearty for my years, I mean, but that they should be weak and tender. I ask your pardon, though," said the old man, "if I spoke rather rough at first. My eyes are not good at night. That's neither age nor illness, they never were, and I didn't see you were a stranger." "I'm sorry to call you from your bed," said Kit, "but those gentlemen you may see by the churchyard gate are strangers too, who have just arrived from a long journey and seek the parsonage house. You can direct us?" "I should be able to," answered the old man in a trembling voice, "for, come next summer, I've been sexton here a good 50 years. The right-hand path, friend, is the road. There is no ill news for our good gentleman, I hope?" Kit thanked him, and made him a hasty answer in the negative. He was turning back, when his attention was caught by the voice of a child. Looking up, he saw a very little creature at a neighbouring window.
"What is that?"
cried the child earnestly.
"Has my dream come true? Pray speak to me, whoever that is. Awake and up."
"Poor boy," said the sexton, before Kit could answer.
How goes it, darling?'
'Has my dream come true?'
exclaimed the child again, in a voice so fervent that it might have thrilled to the heart of any listener.
'But no, that can never be. How could it be? Oh, how could it?'
'I guess his meaning,' said the sexton. 'To bed again, poor boy!'
'I
cried the child in a burst of despair.
knew it could never be. I felt too sure of that before I asked. But all to-night, and last night too, it was the same. I never fall asleep but that cruel dream comes back.'
'Try to sleep again,' said the old man soothingly. 'It will go in time.'
'No, no, I would rather that it stayed, cruel as it is. I would rather that it stayed,' rejoined the child. 'I am not afraid to have it in my sleep, but I am so sad, so very, very sad.'
The old man blessed him, the child in tears replied good night, and Kit was again alone. He hurried back, moved by what he had heard, though more by the child's manner than by anything he had said, as his meaning was hidden from him. They took the path indicated by the sexton, and soon arrived before the parsonage wall. Turning round to look about them when they had got thus far, they saw, among some ruined buildings at a distance, one single solitary light. It shone from what appeared to be an old oriel window, and being surrounded by the deep shadows of overhanging walls, sparkled like a star. Bright and glimmering as the stars above their heads, lonely and motionless as they, it seemed to claim some kindred with the eternal lamps of heaven, and to burn in fellowship with them.
'What light is that?' said the younger brother. 'It is surely,' said Mr Garland, 'in the ruin where they live. I see no other ruin hereabouts.' 'They cannot,' returned the brother hastily, 'be waking at this late hour.'
Kit interposed directly, and begged that while they rang and waited at the gate, they would let him make his way to where this light was shining, and try to ascertain if any people were about. Obtaining the permission he desired, he darted off with breathless eagerness, and, still carrying the birdcage in his hand, made straight towards the spot. It was not easy to hold that pace among the graves, and at another time he might have gone more slowly or round by the path. Unmindful of all obstacles, however, he pressed forward without slackening his speed, and soon arrived within a few yards of the window. He approached as softly as he could, and advancing so near the wall as to brush the whitened ivy with his dress, listened. There was no sound inside. The church itself was not more quiet. Touching the glass with his cheek, he listened again. No. And yet there was such a silence all around, that he felt sure he could have heard even the breathing of a sleeper, if there had been one there. A strange circumstance, a light in such a place at that time of night, with no one near it. A curtain was drawn across the lower portion of the window, and he could not see into the room, but there was no shadow thrown upon it from within. To have gained a footing on the wall and tried to look in from above would have been attended with some danger, certainly with some noise, and the chance of terrifying the child, if that really were her habitation. Again and again he listened. Again and again the same wearisome blank. Leaving the spot with slow and cautious steps, and skirting the ruin for a few paces, he came at length to a door. He knocked. No answer. But there was a curious noise inside. It was difficult to determine what it was. It bore a resemblance to the low moaning of one in pain, but it was not that, being far too regular and constant. Now it seemed a kind of song, now a wail. Seemed, that is, to his changing fancy, for the sound itself was never changed or checked. It was unlike anything he had ever heard, and in its tone there was something fearful, chilling, and unearthly. The listener's blood ran colder now than ever it had done in frost and snow, but he knocked again. There was no answer, and the sound went on without any interruption. He laid his hand softly upon the latch and put his knee against the door. It was secured on the inside, but yielded to the pressure, and turned upon its hinges. He saw the glimmering of a fire upon the old walls, and entered. End of chapter 70. Chapter 71 of the Old Curiosity Shop. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Mill Nicholson. The Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens. Chapter 71. The dull red glow of a wood fire, for no lamp or candle burnt within the room, showed him a figure seated on the hearth with its back towards him, bending over the fitful light. The attitude was that of one who sought the heat. It was, and yet was not. The stooping posture and the cowering form were there, but no hands were stretched out to meet the grateful warmth. No shrug or shiver compared its luxury with the piercing cold outside. With limbs huddled together, head bowed down, arms crossed upon the breast, and fingers tightly clenched, it rocked to and fro upon its seat without a moment's pause, accompanying the action with the mournful sound he had heard. The heavy door had closed behind him on his entrance with a crash that made him start. The figure neither spoke, nor turned to look, nor gave in any other way the faintest sign of having heard the noise. The form was that of an old man, his white head akin in colour to the mouldering embers upon which he gazed. He and the failing light and dying fire, the time-worn room, the solitude, the wasted life and gloom, were all in fellowship. Ashes and dust and ruin. Kit tried to speak, and did pronounce some words, though what they were he scarcely knew. Still the same terrible low cry went on, still the same rocking in the chair, the same stricken figure was there, unchanged and heedless of his presence. He had his hand upon the latch, when something in the form, distinctly seen as one log broke and fell, and, as it fell, blazed up, arrested it. He returned to where he had stood before, advanced a pace, another still, another, and he saw the face. Yes, changed as it was, he knew it well. 'Master!' he cried, stooping on one knee, and catching at his hand. 'Dear master, speak to me!' The old man turned slowly towards him, and muttered in a hollow voice, 'This is another. How many of these spirits there have been to-night?' 'No spirit, master. No one but your old servant. You know me now, I'm sure. Miss Nell, where is she? Where is she?' 'They all say that,' cried the old man. 'They all ask the same question. A spirit.' 'Where is she?' demanded Kit. 'Oh, tell me but that, dear master.' 'She is asleep yonder, in there.' 'Thank God! I thank God!' returned the old man. 'I have prayed to him many and many and many a livelong night when she has been asleep. He knows. Hark! Did she call?' 'I heard no voice.' 'You did? You hear her now. Do you tell me that you don't hear that?' He started up and listened again. 'Nor that?' he cried with a triumphant smile.
Can anybody know that voice so well as I? Hush! Hush!' Motioning to him to be silent, he stole away into another chamber. After a short absence, during which he could be heard to speak in a softened, soothing tone, he returned, bearing in his hand a lamp. 'She is still asleep,' he whispered. 'You were right. She did not call, unless she did so in her slumber. She has called to me in her sleep before now, sir. As I have sat by watching, I have seen her lips move, and have known, though no sound came from them, that she spoke of me. I feared the light might dazzle her eyes and wake her, so I brought it here.' He spoke rather to himself than to the visitor, but when he had put the lamp upon the table, he took it up, as if impelled by some momentary recollection or curiosity, and held it near his face. Then, as if forgetting his motive in the very action, he turned away and put it down again. 'She is sleeping soundly,' he said. 'But no wonder. Angel hands have strewn the ground deep with snow, that the lightest footstep may be lighter yet, and the very birds are dead, that they may not wake her. She used to feed them, sir. Though never so cold and hungry, the timid things would fly from us. They never flew from her.' Again he stopped to listen, and scarcely drawing breath, listened for a long, long time. That fancy past, he opened an old chest, took out some clothes as fondly as if they had been living things, and began to smooth and brush them with his hand. 'Why dost thou lie so idle there, dear Nell?' he murmured, 'when there are bright red berries out of doors, waiting for thee to pluck them? Why dost thou lie so idle there, when thy little friends come creeping to the door, crying, "Where is Nell, sweet Nell?" and sob and weep because they do not see thee? She was always gentle with children. The wildest would do her bidding. She had a tender way with them. Indeed she had.' Kit had no power to speak. His eyes were filled with tears. 'Her little homely dress, her favourite!' cried the old man, pressing it to his breast, and patting it with his shrivelled hand. 'She will miss it when she wakes. They have hid it here in sport, but she shall have it. She shall have it. I would not vex my darling for the wide world's riches. See here, these shoes, how worn they are. She kept them to remind her of our last long journey. You see where the little feet went bare upon the ground. They told me afterwards that the stones had cut and bruised them. She never told me that. No, no, God bless her. And I have remembered since, she walked behind me, sir, that I might not see how lame she was. But yet she had my hand in hers, and seemed to lead me still.' He pressed them to his lips, and having carefully put them back again, went on communing with himself, looking wistfully from time to time towards the chamber he had lately visited. 'She was not wont to be a lie-a-bed, but she was well then. We must have patience. When she is well again, she will rise early as she used to do, and ramble abroad in the healthy morning time. I often tried to track the way she had gone, but her small footstep left no print upon the dewy ground to guide me. Who is that? Shut the door quick. Have we not enough to do? Drive away that marble cold, and keep her warm.' The door was indeed opened, for the entrance of Mr Garland and his friend, accompanied by two other persons. These were the schoolmaster and the bachelor. The former held a light in his hand. He had, it seemed, but gone to his own cottage to replenish the exhausted lamp,
at the moment when Kit came up and found the old man alone. He softened again at sight of these two friends, and laying aside the angry manner, if to anything so feeble and so sad the term can be applied, in which he had spoken when the door opened, resumed his former seat, and subsided, by little and little, into the old action, and the old dull wandering sound. Of the strangers he took no heed whatever. He had seen them, but appeared quite incapable of interest or curiosity. The younger brother stood apart. The bachelor drew a chair towards the old man, and sat down close beside him. After a long silence, he ventured to speak. 'Another night, and not in bed?' he said softly. 'I hoped you would be more mindful of your promise to me. Why do you not take some rest?' 'Sleep has left me,' returned the old man. 'It is all with her.' 'It would pain her very much to know that you were watching thus,' said the bachelor. 'You would not give her pain?' 'I am not so sure of that. If it would only rouse her. She has slept so very long, and yet I am rash to say so. It is a good and happy sleep, eh?' 'Indeed it is,' returned the bachelor. 'Indeed it is.' 'That's well. And the waking,' faltered the old man. 'Happy too. Happier than tongue can tell, or heart of man conceive.' They watched him as he rose and stole on tiptoe to the other chamber where the lamp had been replaced. They listened as he spoke again within its silent walls. They looked into the faces of each other, and no man's cheek was free from tears. He came back, whispering that she was still asleep, but that he thought she had moved. It was her hand, he said. A little, a very, very little, but he was pretty sure she had moved it, perhaps in seeking his. He had known her do that before now, though in the deepest sleep the while. And when he had said this, he dropped into his chair again, and clasping his hands above his head, uttered a cry never to be forgotten. The poor schoolmaster motioned to the bachelor that he would come on the other side and speak to him. They gently unlocked his fingers, which he had twisted in his grey hair, and pressed them in their own. 'He will hear me,' said the schoolmaster, 'I am sure. He will hear either me or you if we beseech him. She would, at all times.' 'I will hear any voice she liked to hear,' cried the old man. 'I love all she loved.' 'I know you do,' returned the schoolmaster. 'I am certain of it. Think of her. Think of all the sorrows and afflictions you have shared together, of all the trials and all the peaceful pleasures you have jointly known. I do, I do. I think of nothing else.' 'I would have you think of nothing else to-night. Of nothing but those things which will soften your heart, dear friend, and open it to old affections and old times. It is so that she would speak to you herself, and in her name it is that I speak now.' 'You do well to speak softly,' said the old man. 'We will not wake her. I should be glad to see her eyes again, and to see her smile. There is a smile upon her young face now, but it is fixed and changeless. I would have it come and go. That shall be in Heaven's good time. We will not wake her.' 'Let us not talk of her in her sleep, but as she used to be, when you were journeying together, far away, as she was at home in the old house from which you fled together, as she was in the old cheerful time,' said the schoolmaster. 'She was always cheerful, very cheerful,' cried the old man, looking steadfastly at him. 'There was ever something mild and quiet about her, I remember, from the first. But she was of a happy nature.' 'We have heard you say,'
pursued the schoolmaster, that in this and in all goodness she was like her mother. You can think of and remember her?' He maintained his steadfast look, but gave no answer. 'Or even one before her?' said the bachelor. 'It is many years ago, and affliction makes the time longer. But you have not forgotten her whose death contributed to make this child so dear to you, even before you knew her worth, or could read her heart. Say that you could carry back your thoughts to very distant days, to the time of your early life, when, unlike this fair flower, you did not pass your youth alone. Say that you could remember, long ago, another child who loved you dearly, you being but a child yourself. Say that you had a brother, long forgotten, long unseen, long separated from you, who now at last, in your utmost need, came back to comfort and console you. To be to you what you were once to him,' cried the younger, falling on his knee before him. 'To repay your old affection, brother dear, by constant care, solicitude, and love, to be at your right hand what he has never ceased to be when oceans rolled between us, to call witness his unchanging truth and mindfulness of bygone days, whole years of desolation. Give me but one word of recognition, brother, and never, no never, in the brightest moment of our youngest days, when, poor silly boys, we thought to pass our lives together, have we been half as dear and precious to each other as we shall be from this time hence.' The old man looked from face to face, and his lips moved, but no sound came from them in reply. 'If we were knit together then,' pursued the younger brother, 'what will be the bond between us now? Our love and fellowship began in childhood, when life was all before us, and will be resumed when we have proved it, and are but children at the last. As many restless spirits who have hunted fortune, fame, or pleasure through the world retire in their decline to where they first drew breath, vainly seeking to be children once again before they die, so we, less fortunate than they in early life, but happier in its closing scenes, will set up our rest again among our boyish haunts, and going home with no hope realized that had its growth in manhood, carrying back nothing that we brought away, but our old yearnings to each other, saving no fragment from the wreck of life but that which first endeared it, may be, indeed, but children as at first. And even,' he added in an altered voice, 'even if what I dread to name has come to pass, even if that be so, or is to be, which Heaven forbid and spare us, still, dear brother, we are not apart, and have that comfort in our great affliction.' By little and little, the old man had drawn back towards the inner chamber while these words were spoken. He pointed there as he replied, with trembling lips. 'You plot among you to wean my heart from her. You never will do that. Never while I have life. I have no relative or friend but her. I never had. I never will have. She is all in all to me. It is too late to part us now.' Waving them off with his hand, and calling softly to her as he went, he stole into the room. They who were left behind drew close together, and after a few whispered words, not unbroken by emotion or easily uttered, followed him. They moved so gently that their footsteps made no noise, but there were sobs from among the group, and sounds of grief and mourning. For she was dead. There upon her little bed she lay at rest. The solemn stillness was no marvel now. She was dead. No sleep so beautiful and calm, so free from trace of pain, so fair to look upon. She seemed a creature fresh from the hand of God, and waiting for the breath of life, not one who had lived and suffered death. Her couch was dressed with here and there some winter berries and green leaves,
gathered in a spot she had been used to favour.
'When I die, put near me something that has loved the light, and had the sky above it always.'
Those were her words. She was dead. Dear, gentle, patient, noble Nell was dead. Her little bird, a poor slight thing the pressure of a finger would have crushed, was stirring nimbly in its cage, and the strong heart of its child mistress was mute and motionless for ever. Where were the traces of her early cares, her sufferings and fatigues? All gone. Sorrow was dead indeed in her, but peace and perfect happiness were born, imaged in her tranquil beauty and profound repose. And still her former self lay there, unaltered in this change. Yes, the old fireside had smiled upon that same sweet face. It had passed, like a dream, through haunts of misery and care, at the door of the poor schoolmaster on the summer evening, before the furnace fire upon the cold wet night, at the still bedside of the dying boy, there had been the same mild, lovely look. So shall we know the angels in their majesty after death. The old man held one languid arm in his, and had the small hand tight folded to his breast for warmth. It was the hand she had stretched out to him with her last smile, the hand that had led him on through all their wanderings. Ever and anon he pressed it to his lips, then hugged it to his breast again, murmuring that it was warmer now, and, as he said it, he looked in agony to those who stood around, as if imploring them to help her. She was dead, and past all help, or need of it. The ancient rooms she had seemed to fill with life, even while her own was waning fast, the garden she had tended, the eyes she had gladdened, the noiseless haunts of many a thoughtful hour, the paths she had trodden as it were but yesterday, could know her never more. 'It is not,' said the schoolmaster, as he bent down to kiss her on the cheek, and gave his tears free vent, 'it is not on earth that heaven's justice ends. Think what earth is compared with the world to which her young spirit has winged its early flight, and say, if one deliberate wish expressed in solemn terms above this bed could call her back to life, which of us would utter it? End of chapter 71. Chapter 72 of the Old Curiosity Shop. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Mill Nicholson. The Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens. Chapter 72. When the morning came, and they could speak more calmly on the subject of their grief, they heard how her life had closed. She had been dead 2 days. They were all about her at the time, knowing that the end was drawing on. She died soon after daybreak. They had read and talked to her in the earlier portion of the night, but as the hours crept on, she sunk to sleep. They could tell, by what she faintly uttered in her dreams, that they were of her journeyings with the old man. They were of no painful scenes, but of people who had helped and used them kindly, for she often said, God bless you, with great fervour. Waking, she never wandered in her mind but once, and that was a beautiful music which she said was in the air. God knows, it may have been. Opening her eyes at last from a very quiet sleep, she begged that they would kiss her once again. That done, she turned to the old man with a lovely smile upon her face, such, they said, as they had never seen, and never could forget, and clung with both her arms about his neck. They did not know that she was dead at first. She had spoken very often of the two sisters, who, she said, were like dear friends to her. She wished they could be told how much she thought about them, and how she had watched them as they walked together by the river side at night. She would like to see poor Kit, she had often said of late. She wished there was somebody to take her love to Kit, and, even then, she never thought or spoke about him, but with something of her old, clear, merry laugh. For the rest, she had never murmured or complained, but with a quiet mind and manner quite unaltered, save that she every day became more earnest and more grateful to them, faded like the light upon a summer's evening. The child who had been her little friend came there almost as soon as it was day, with an offering of dried flowers which he begged them to lay upon her breast. It was he who had come to the window overnight and spoken to the sexton, and they saw in the snow traces of small feet where he had been lingering near the room in which she lay, before he went to bed. He had a fancy, it seemed, that they had left her there alone, and could not bear the thought. He told them of his dream again, and that it was of her being restored to them, just as she used to be. He begged hard to see her, saying that he would be very quiet, and that they need not fear his being alarmed, for he had sat alone by his young brother all day long when he was dead, and had felt glad to be so near him. They let him have his wish, and indeed he kept his word, and was, in his childish way, a lesson to them all. Up to that time the old man had not spoken once, except to her, or stirred from the bedside. But when he saw her little favourite, he was moved as they had not seen him yet, and made as though he would have him come nearer. Then, pointing to the bed, he burst into tears for the first time, and they who stood by, knowing that the sight of this child had done him good, left them alone together. Soothing him with his artless talk of her, the child persuaded him to take some rest, to walk abroad, to do almost as he desired him. And when the day came on which must remove her in her earthly shape from earthly eyes for ever, he led him away, that he might not know when she was taken from him. They were to gather fresh leaves and berries for her bed. It was Sunday, a bright, clear, wintry afternoon, and as they traversed the village street, those who were walking in their path drew back to make way for them, and gave them a softened greeting. Some shook the old man kindly by the hand, some stood uncovered while he tottered by, and many cried, God help him, as he passed along. 'Neighbour,' said the old man, stopping at the cottage where his young guide's mother dwelt, 'how is it that the folks are nearly all in black to-day? I have seen a mourning ribbon or a piece of crape on almost every one.' She could not tell, the woman said. 'Why, you yourself, you wear the colour too,' he said. 'Windows are closed that never used to be by day. What does this mean?' Again the woman said she could not tell. 'We must go back,' said the old man hurriedly. 'We must see what this is.'
'No, no,' cried the child, detaining him. 'Remember what you promised. Our way is to the old green lane where she and I so often were, and where you found us more than once, making those garlands for a garden. Do not turn back.'
'Where is she now?' said the old man. 'Tell me that.'
'Do you not know?' returned the child. 'Did we not leave her but just now?'
'True, true. It was her we left, was it?' He pressed his hand upon his brow, looked vacantly round, and as if impelled by a sudden thought, crossed the road and entered the sexton's house. He and his deaf assistant were sitting before the fire. Both rose up on seeing who it was. The child made a hasty sign to them with his hand. It was the action of an instant, but that and the old man's look were quite enough. 'Do you bury any one to-day?' he said eagerly.
No, no. Who should we bury, sir?' returned the sexton.
'Ay, who indeed? I say with you, who indeed?'
'It is a holiday with us, good sir,' returned the sexton mildly. 'We have no work to do to-day.'
'Why, then, I'll go where you will,'
said the old man, turning to the child.
'You're sure of what you tell me? You would not deceive me? I am changed, even in the little time since you last saw me.'
'Go thy ways with him, sir,'
cried the sexton, 'and Heaven be with ye both.' 'I am quite ready,' said the old man meekly. 'Come, boy, come!'
And so submitted to be led away. And now the bell. The bell she had so often heard, by night and day, and listened to with solemn pleasure, almost as a living voice, rung its remorseless toll for her, so young, so beautiful, so good. Decrepit age, and vigorous life, and blooming youth, and helpless infancy, poured forth, on crutches, in the pride of strength and health, in the full blush of promise, in the mere dawn of life, to gather round her tomb. Old men were there, whose eyes were dim and senses failing; grandmothers who might have died 10 years ago, and still been old; the deaf, the blind, the lame, the palsied, the living dead in many shapes and forms, to see the closing of that early grave. What was the death it would shut in, to that which still could crawl and creep above it? Along the crowded path they bore her now, pure as the newly fallen snow that covered it, whose day on earth had been as fleeting. Under the porch where she had sat when Heaven in its mercy brought her to that peaceful spot, she passed again, and the old church received her in its quiet shade. They carried her to one old nook where she had many and many a time sat musing, and laid their burden softly on the pavement. The light streamed on it through the coloured window, a window where the boughs of trees were ever rustling in the summer, and where the birds sang sweetly all day long. With every breath of air that stirred among those branches in the sunshine, some trembling, changing light would fall upon her grave. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Many a young hand dropped in its little wreath, many a stifled sob was heard. Some, and they were not a few, knelt down. All were sincere and truthful in their sorrow. The service done, the mourners stood apart, and the villagers closed round to look into the grave before the pavement stone should be replaced. One called to mind how he had seen her sitting on that very spot, and how her book had fallen on her lap, and she was gazing with a pensive face upon the sky. Another told how he had wondered much that one so delicate as she should be so bold, how she had never feared to enter the church alone at night, but had loved to linger there when all was quiet, and even to climb the tower stair, with no more light than that of the moon rays stealing through the loopholes in the thick old wall. A whisper went about among the oldest, that she had seen and talked with angels, and when they called to mind how she had looked and spoken, and her early death, some thought it might be so indeed. Thus, coming to the grave in little knots, and glancing down, and giving place to others, and falling off in whispering groups of 3 or 4, the church was cleared in time, of all but the sexton and the mourning friends. They saw the vault covered, and the stone fixed down. Then, when the dusk of evening had come on, and not a sound disturbed the sacred stillness of the place, when the bright moon poured in her light on tomb and monument, on pillar, wall, and arch, and most of all, it seemed to them, upon her quiet grave, in that calm time when outward things and inward thoughts teem with assurances of immortality, and worldly hopes and fears are humbled in the dust before them, then, with tranquil and submissive hearts, they turned away, and left the child with God. Oh, it is hard to take to heart the lesson that such deaths will teach, but let no man reject it, for it is one that all must learn, and is a mighty universal truth. When death strikes down the innocent and young, for every fragile form from which he lets the panting spirit free, 100 virtues rise, in shapes of mercy, charity, and love, to walk the world and bless it. Of every tear that sorrowing mortals shed on such green graves, some good is born, some gentler nature comes. In the destroyer's steps there spring up bright creations that defy his power, and his dark path becomes a way of light to heaven. It was late when the old man came home. The boy had led him to his own dwelling, under some pretence, on their way back, and, rendered drowsy by his long ramble and late want of rest, he had sunk into a deep sleep by the fireside. He was perfectly exhausted, and they were careful not to rouse him. The slumber held him a long time, and when he at length awoke, the moon was shining. The younger brother, uneasy at his protracted absence, was watching at the door for his coming, when he appeared in the pathway with his little guide. He advanced to meet them, and tenderly obliging the old man to lean upon his arm, conducted him with slow and trembling steps towards the house. He repaired to her chamber straight. Not finding what he had left there, he returned with distracted looks to the room in which they were assembled. From that he rushed into the schoolmaster's cottage, calling her name. They followed close upon him, and when he had vainly searched it, brought him home. With such persuasive words as pity and affection could suggest, they prevailed upon him to sit among them and hear what they should tell him. Then, endeavouring by every little artifice to prepare his mind for what must come, and dwelling with many fervent words upon the happy lot to which he had been removed, they told him at last the truth. The moment it had passed their lips, he fell down among them like a murdered man. For many hours they had little hope of his surviving, but grief is strong, and he recovered. If there be any who have never known the blank that follows death, the weary void, the sense of desolation that will come upon the strongest minds, when something familiar and beloved is missed at every turn, the connection between inanimate and senseless things and the object of recollection, when every household god becomes a monument, and every room a grave. If there be any who have not known this, and proved it by their own experience, they can never faintly guess how, for many days, the old man pined and moped away the time, and wandered here and there as seeking something, and had no comfort. Whatever power of thought or memory he retained, was all bound up in her. He never understood, or seemed to care to understand, about his brother. To every endearment and attention he continued listless. If they spoke to him on this or any other theme, save one, he would hear them patiently for a while, then turn away, and go on seeking as before. On that one theme, which was in his and all their minds, it was impossible to touch. Dead. He could not hear or bear the word. The slightest hint of it would throw him into a paroxysm, like that he had when it was first spoken. In what hope he lived, no man could tell, but that he had some hope of finding her again, some faint and shadowy hope, deferred from day to day, and making him from day to day more sick and sore at heart, was plain to all. They bethought them of a removal from the scene of this last sorrow, of trying whether change of place would rouse or cheer him. His brother sought the advice of those who were accounted skilful in such matters, and they came and saw him. Some of the number stayed upon the spot, conversed with him when he would converse, and watched him as he wandered up and down, alone and silent. Move him where they might, they said, he would ever seek to get back there. His mind would run upon that spot. If they confined him closely, and kept a strict guard upon him, they might hold him prisoner, but if he could by any means escape, he would surely wander back to that place, or die upon the road. The boy, to whom he had submitted at first, had no longer any influence with him. At times he would suffer the child to walk by his side, or would even take such notice of his presence as giving him his hand, or would stop to kiss his cheek, or pat him on the head. At other times he would entreat him, not unkindly, to be gone, and would not brook him near. But, whether alone, or with this pliant friend, or with those who would have given him, at any cost or sacrifice, some consolation or some peace of mind, if happily the means could have been devised, he was at all times the same, with no love or care for anything in life, a broken-hearted man. At length they found one day that he had risen early, and, with his knapsack on his back, his staff in hand, her own straw hat, and little basket full of such things as she had been used to carry, was gone. As they were making ready to pursue him far and wide, a frightened schoolboy came who had seen him, but a moment before, sitting in the church, upon her grave, he said. They hastened there, and going softly to the door, espied him in the attitude of one who waited patiently. They did not disturb him then, but kept a watch upon him all that day. When it grew quite dark, he rose and returned home, and went to bed, murmuring to himself, "She will come to-morrow." Upon the morrow he was there again, from sunrise until night, and still at night he laid him down to rest, and murmured, "She will come to-morrow." And thenceforth, every day, and all day long, he waited at her grave for her. How many pictures of new journeys over pleasant country, of resting places under the free broad sky, of rambles in the fields and woods and paths not often trodden, how many tones of that one well-remembered voice, how many glimpses of the form, the fluttering dress, the hair that waved so gaily in the wind, how many visions of what had been, and what he hoped was yet to be, rose up before him in the old dull silent church. He never told them what he thought, or where he went. He would sit with them at night, pondering with a secret satisfaction, they could see, upon the flight that he and she would take before night came again. And still they would hear him whisper in his prayers, "Lord, let her come to-morrow." The last time was on a genial day in spring. He did not return at the usual hour, and they went to seek him. He was lying dead upon the stone. They laid him by the side of her whom he had loved so well, and, in the church where they had often prayed and mused and lingered hand in hand, the child and the old man slept together. End of chapter 72.